I opened my marriage, lost my husband, and now I'm trying desperately to win him back. Is it too late? I'm seeking advice on how to salvage what remains of my marriage. Let me start by saying that I've been with my husband for 7 years, 5 of which we've been married. For privacy, I'll refer to us as Skyler and James. We met during our 2nd year of community college. James pursued a 4-year degree in business administration from a university offering remote programs, while I earned a 2-year degree in office management. Now, James is 27, and I'm 26. We had plans to start a family later this year. Our dream was to have 4 children, ideally 2 boys and 2 girls. Our families adored us, and we shared what I believed to be a truly happy marriage. But then I made a terrible mistake. I developed a close relationship with a delivery driver for one of the major courier companies, a dynamic that some might describe as a work-spouse relationship. To keep his identity private, I'll call him Jaden. For 2 years, Jaden had been delivering to my office. At 25 and unmarried, he and I quickly clicked. While it wasn't romantic at first, there was an undeniable spark whenever he stopped by. Our brief conversations became something I looked forward to, and I started making an effort to be available when he arrived. One day, our usual small talk took a surprising turn. Jaden asked if he could pose a personal question. Hesitantly, I told him to go ahead, assuring him it was fine. He admitted, "I feel a strong attraction to you and was wondering if you've ever felt the same." His boldness caught me completely off guard. After some thought, I confessed that I had felt it too. Jaden responded that if I weren't married, he would have asked me out. I thanked him for the compliment, and we ended the conversation there. However, things grew awkward between us in the following weeks. I was racked with guilt and began to question whether I had already crossed a line. At home, life with James continued as normal. We were still happy, and I loved him deeply. Yet, despite my contentment, thoughts of Jaden persisted. Curious about how to reconcile these feelings, I stumbled across an article about open marriages. The idea initially struck me as absurd and unsettling, but it stayed on my mind. Could such an arrangement work? Would it allow me to explore my feelings for Jaden without jeopardizing my bond with James? Weeks later, I decided to bring up the topic. One lazy Sunday morning, as we were both lounging and scrolling through our phones, I casually asked James, "What's your opinion on open marriages?" He raised an eyebrow. "Are you talking about couples sleeping with other people?" I nodded and asked for his thoughts. His response was firm. He found the idea repugnant. "If someone wants to be with others, they should just get a divorce," he said bluntly. I tried to downplay the conversation, mentioning how common open relationships were becoming in some parts of the world, but his expression left no room for doubt. He was disgusted by the idea. I quickly changed the subject and decided I'd never bring it up again. A few weeks later, James and I were cuddling in bed after a wonderful evening together. Out of nowhere, he asked, "Who were you thinking about when you brought up open marriages?" His question caught me completely off guard. As I lay on his chest, my stomach dropped. I hesitated before responding, "What do you mean?" I wasn't thinking about anyone specific. James's tone grew more serious. "I've read that when women bring up open relationships, it's often because they already have someone in mind, or they've cheated." I was shaken by his words. He added, "I know you too well. Just be honest with me." I could have lied and left it there, but instead, I admitted, "I haven't cheated on you and never would. But there is someone at work I've thought about, in the context of us ever discussing an open marriage." "Who is it?" James pressed. Reluctantly, I described Jaden and our interactions, though I omitted my admission to Jaden that I'd felt attracted to him. I downplayed everything, terrified of how James would react. To my horror, James said, "You know, you've already cheated on me." I protested, "No, I haven't." James explained, "Your relationship with this guy? It's an emotional affair. That term was new to me, and James calmly but firmly outlined what it meant. I listened in silence, growing more ashamed with every word. Finally, James suggested we end the conversation so he could sleep. He had an early start the next day. While he slept soundly, I stayed awake, my mind racing. I started researching emotional affairs on my phone. Article after article confirmed it. I had betrayed James emotionally, even if nothing physical had happened. The realization crushed me. The next morning, James kissed me goodbye before heading to work, as if nothing had happened. I tried to act normal, but guilt weighed heavily on me. I vowed to make things right, to focus solely on James and our marriage. But a few nights later, after another intimate evening together, James brought up the subject again. "If you really want to try an open marriage, I'd be willing to do it," he said. His words stunned me. "Why now?" I asked. James explained that he'd been thinking about our earlier conversation and decided we should try it while we were still young if it was something we both wanted. Though I was hesitant, I agreed, emphasizing that our love and marriage would always come first. We established a few ground rules. 1. We had to tell each other in advance about any plans to see someone else. 2. We'd later share what happened, but without explicit details. 3. All intimacy with others had to be protected. I also suggested keeping our arrangement private and agreeing to prioritize our marriage above all. James, however, refused these additional rules without explanation. His unwillingness to compromise made me uneasy, but I didn't push the matter. Over the next few weeks, I became increasingly uncomfortable with the idea of an open relationship. James's detachment unsettled me, and I started to feel like I was losing him. I decided to avoid pursuing anything with Jaden and focused on restoring normalcy at home. At work, I limited my conversations with Jaden to polite exchanges about the weather or our workloads. Eventually, though, he noticed the shift. One day, he asked, "Is everything okay? You've been distant." I hesitated but decided to tell him about the open marriage arrangement. He seemed surprised but intrigued. Later that week, I asked him to meet for a drink so we could talk more openly. He agreed. We met at a cozy local bar with an outdoor terrace, perfect for the mild spring evening. After some small talk, I told Jaden about the open arrangement James and I had recently agreed to. To my surprise, Jaden didn't hesitate. "If you're serious, I'd definitely be interested," he said. "I've been hoping for this for a while." Though I was nervous, his enthusiasm emboldened me. We agreed to meet at his apartment the following evening. I set a firm boundary: I'd need to leave by 6:30 p.m. to be home for dinner with James. The next day, I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that felt special but understated. I texted James during the day to confirm our plans for the evening and to gauge how he was feeling. He didn't respond until mid-afternoon, when he sent a short message, "All good. Love you." Relieved, I took it as a sign that he was still okay with everything. That evening, my time with Jaden was as intense as I'd imagined, but also strangely hollow. It wasn't the same as being with James. The thrill came from the taboo nature of what we were doing, not from any deeper connection. Afterward, I left promptly, as promised, and hurried home. When I arrived, James wasn't there. For a moment, I was relieved. I had time to shower and erase any trace of my encounter. Despite my efforts, guilt weighed heavily on me. I felt like I had betrayed everything our marriage stood for. To make up for it, I prepared a special dinner and set the table with candles, hoping to create a romantic atmosphere. I wanted to show James how much he meant to me, to reassure him that my relationship with Jaden was purely physical and insignificant compared to my love for him. But as the evening wore on, James didn't come home. By 9:30 p.m., I was worried and texted him repeatedly, asking if he was okay. Eventually, he replied with a short message, "Don't wait up. I'll be late." When he finally came home after midnight, he went straight to the guest bathroom, locking the door behind him, something he'd never done before. I knocked, asking if he was all right, but he didn't respond. When he emerged, wrapped in a towel, he acted as though nothing was wrong. "How was your night?" he asked casually. "It was fine," I said, unsure how to proceed. "Did you sleep with Jaden?" he asked bluntly. His question hit me like a ton of bricks. I stammered, "Why do you have to phrase it like that?" "I just want an honest answer," he said, his tone cold. I nodded reluctantly. "Yes, we were together." James's expression didn't change. Instead, he calmly explained that he had spent the evening out at various bars, dancing and meeting people. The smell of perfume on his clothes didn't go unnoticed, and when I pressed him about who he was with, he refused to answer. "It's not important," he said. "We didn't sleep together." His detachment scared me more than anger ever could. When I asked why he had used the guest bathroom, his response was equally unsettling. "Until you've done a full panel of STD tests, I won't share a bathroom or bed with you," he said matter-of-factly. "This is my way of protecting myself." His words crushed me. I protested, reminding him that Jaden and I had used protection. "That doesn't cover everything," James replied. "Until you're cleared, we're keeping our distance." I tried to hold back tears but failed. "This isn't what I wanted," I sobbed. "I don't want to lose you." "You've already taken your turn," James said sharply. "Now it's mine." James's words struck me like a blow. I had never imagined he would approach our open marriage this way. His cold demeanor and calculated detachment broke my heart. I tried to plead with him, to remind him that our marriage and love meant more than any of this. "This isn't fair," I said through tears. "I never wanted to hurt you." James stood firm. "Fair? You asked for this. Now I'm going to take my time to figure out what I want." He walked away, leaving me sobbing on the couch. That night, he slept in the guest bedroom, and I barely got a moment's rest. When I woke up the next morning, he was already gone. For the next few days, James barely spoke to me. He would leave early in the morning and return late at night, often without explaining where he had been. He ignored most of my texts and calls, responding only with curt replies like, "Busy. Don't wait up." The distance between us was unbearable. I missed our old routines, the mornings spent chatting over coffee, the evenings cooking together, the quiet moments of intimacy that had once defined our relationship. Now, all of it felt like a distant memory. In my desperation, I decided to break things off with Jaden completely. I called him after work one evening and asked to meet. When we sat down, I explained that our relationship had been a mistake. "I love my husband," I told him. "I can't do this anymore." Jaden was understanding, but he asked for one final night together. I reluctantly agreed, hoping it would bring closure. It was the most meaningless encounter of my life, short, awkward, and devoid of any emotion. When it was over, Jaden looked at me with disappointment. "That was terrible," he said bluntly. "You weren't even there." I apologized, acknowledging that my heart wasn't in it and that I deeply regretted everything. His parting words were chilling. "I don't understand women like you," he muttered before turning away. I left his apartment feeling emptier than ever, tears streaming down my face as I drove home. How had I let things spiral so far out of control? I had destroyed my marriage for nothing. The following Sunday was Easter, a holiday we always spent with my family. James was supposed to come with me, but when I reminded him that morning, he simply said, "I'm not going." Then what am I supposed to tell my parents? I asked, my voice breaking. "Tell them the truth," he replied coldly, packing a small gym bag before leaving the house. Unable to face the truth, I lied to my family, telling them James had been called into work for an emergency. They initially believed me, but as the day went on, they started to suspect something was wrong. I wasn't texting or calling James like I usually did, and my attempt to fake text conversations with him didn't fool them for long. By Monday morning, I couldn't keep it in any longer. I confessed everything to my parents and my sister. Their reactions were as harsh as I expected. They yelled at me, called me selfish, and reminded me that I hadn't been raised this way. My sister was especially cutting, accusing me of throwing away a wonderful husband for a meaningless fling. Through tears, I promised them I had learned from my mistakes. I told them my only priority now was to regain James's love and trust. While they were angry, they eventually softened, saying they would support me as I tried to fix my marriage. Update 1. James returned from visiting his parents in Florida with a decision: he wanted a divorce. He told me he couldn't trust me anymore and that he felt humiliated by what had happened. His words cut deeper than anything I had experienced. We finalized the divorce in December, and it broke me. But in an unexpected turn of events, James and I reconnected on Valentine's Day this year. We've started seeing each other again, but only casually. James has made it clear that this is purely physical and that we will never be a couple again. I'm clinging to this fragile connection, hoping it might lead to something more. I've even entertained the idea of co-parenting with him if I can't win him back as a husband. I know this might seem irrational, but I can't imagine a life or future with anyone else. I would love advice from anyone who has faced a similar situation. Am I crazy for holding on to this hope? Should I let go and move on? Thank you for taking the time to read my story. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe and turn on notifications to be the first to have radish and real stories with you. Have a great day.